Hello. Hi. Today is a very special day. You all know because I greeted you at the door and told you to please help us commemorate Yom HaShoah. And we have a special guest speaker. Actually, we have two. A very, very interesting story. They're twin sisters who managed to be survivors. Oops, sorry. Okay. Anyways, and so the story will be very interesting. You'll get to ask questions. They're going to tell you all about their experiences. And we're going to do a candle lighting ceremony. And I'll let, which one of you take over for that? Which one of you is going to do the candle lighting?
We'll do it all together.
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to do it all. Triple digits here. Okay. You want to do it now? We usually do it before the speaker.
Oh, we already lit.
You know, we kind of talked about that. I mean, just.
Oh, they're already lit? Okay, yeah.
We just want to welcome everybody. As you heard, it is this the start. We're transitioning into Yom HaShoah, so Holocaust Remembrance Day. What's so odd for me is that it's exactly during this week, now a few years ago, that I was on March of the Living in Poland, where we have the opportunity to both visit the sites in Krakow and in Warsaw, where Jewish life was thriving, but as we know, was viciously taken away. Raise your hands if you have been in Eastern Europe, if you've seen any of the camps, been to Poland. So not too many. So I hope as you get older and you have the chance maybe in high school or in college that you take the opportunity to go on programs like March of the Living, go on programs like Ramah Seminar, to visit Poland, to visit Germany, to visit the concentration camps so that you are able to say, I witnessed this with my own eyes, and to do what you're doing today, which is incredibly important. I want you to listen both with your eyes and your ears today with the intent to say to yourself, I'm going to be listening to someone's story, but I'm the messenger. It'll be my job to transmit this story to my children. Can I get everyone's promise for that? Yes. So it's not just something that I'm listening to because I have to be here, but it's my job to make sure that the stories that I'm listening to firsthand, it's my job to make sure that I tell these stories to my children. So with that, we are going to rise. So Cantor Feldman's going to lead us in what's called an El Malay. And Mr. Cohen, are you playing or no? No?
Later on.
Oh, I'm sorry, later on. So Cantor Feldman is going to begin an El Malay Rachamim prayer for us. This is called the Memorial Prayer. And this is where we pay respect and just really give our hearts to the 6 million Jews that perished during the Shoah, during the Holocaust.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת הנשים נשים וטף שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו בשואה. אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירי בסתר כנפיך לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם ונאמר אמן. May God remember the souls of the martyrs of our people, who gave their lives for the sanctification of God's name, and the men, the women, and the children who were slaughtered, burned, and killed in the Holocaust. In their memory, we pray that may their lives reflect a measure, may our lives reflect a measure of their bravery, dedication, and purity of soul. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, and may they be remembered with honor, and may they rest in peace at your right hand forever. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you very much. That was very beautiful. That was a beautiful prayer. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, hello. Better? Better. Yes? You can hear me now. Okay, thank you. That was a beautiful prayer. More closer? Like this? Is good? All right. Okay, so I guess we can start. Gita, do you want to start?
Start a little bit more because it has all the information and pictures.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I'll start.
Okay. This is one of our guests, Gita Morris, and I'll let her tell you about herself.
Okay, thank you. We'll see how that
Or you
works.
can sit
Okay,
here,
yeah.
I suppose.
Okay. My twin sister and I have a very unusual survivor story because unlike most of the survivors that you're aware of and that you know come from somewhere in Europe, we are born in Shanghai, China, after our parents fled Berlin way back in 1938. And so we're going to tell you all about how all this happened. And the thing that we really want you to remember is that what we're going to show you when my sister shows up with the pictures and talk about is from the perspective of children. We experienced the war, we experienced internment camp as children. But amazingly, we have fantastic memories of those days. Maybe because it was a traumatic time, not sure. But we really do remember a lot from then. We were 8 years old when we came to the United States and not speaking any English, as well as our parents. But we have a lot to tell you. I'll try to start a little bit. Let me see if this works, okay? Okay. I'm going to see if I can get up here. Okay. You did it all by yourself. I could have.
It's kind of long. Unfortunately, you speak like right into it. Do you want to hold it? Is that okay?
That's fine.
I think it's better.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. We generally start off by telling you about our parents, and we generally have pictures of them. So I'm hoping my sister Monica is her name, with a K. So in German, that's pronounced Monika. And my name, Gita, is pronounced Gita. Okay? But once we hit the States, it's been Monica and Gita, or as what happened to us in elementary school, harmonica and guitar. Yep, we did get away from that. Our dad was born in a little town north of Berlin, Mecklenburg, and he was born in 1900, which was great for us because we always knew how old he was, right? That was easy for us. Our dad is one of those survivors, was one of those survivors who simply would never talk to us about what happened to him. We know almost nothing about his life. Most of what we do know is what we've learned, what we've researched, what we've read. And I fortunately have my oldest son who has done a lot of research for us. And thanks to him, we also have a lot of pictures to go with our talk. However, as a young man, our dad moved to Berlin, and that's where he was until he left. Our mother was born in Poland, Częstochowa. Yeah? Her father was what is known as a political dissident. You know, he would stand on the street corner and say terrible things about the government, and they didn't like it. Threw him out of the country, and he also wound up going to Berlin. Our grandmother then took the 5 children, including our mother, who happened to have been born at something like under 2 pounds, and they never thought that she would survive, but she did. She took her children and also made her way to Berlin. And somehow, we don't know how, and there's a lot of things we really don't know and don't have a way of finding out, our parents met. And they worked, and they eventually became engaged. Now, we're talking, we can go to 1938, but let me just say this. To our knowledge of what we have heard and read, Hitler had started building camps as early as 1933. Now, they were not called concentration camps. They were called work camps, okay? And those years between then and 1938, when something occurred to our father, many people would just disappear. Someone would say, "See that man over there? He's Jewish." And next thing you know, he'd be gone. And this is exactly what happened to our dad in 1938. Someone pointed him out, and he was gone. Of course, the families didn't know where he was or what camp he was, and what happened to him. You just didn't know. Excuse me. I hate to do this without all our pictures. Nope.
She knows where to go.
I did try to describe to her, and security knows that she's supposed to come here. Uh-huh. Okay. You'll recognize her the minute she walks in. Now, I do want you to know that she's my older sister by 5 minutes, okay? And she likes to say she was an only child for 5 minutes. And back when we were born in 1939, they, of course, did not know that our mother was going to have twins. So nobody had any idea, and I was just a big surprise when I came along. They had her name picked out, but of course, we're not ready for mine. And when the doctors asked our parents what my name would be, my dad spoke up and said, "I'm going to name her after my favorite movie star." And her name was Brigitte Helen. And so that is my name, Brigitte. And Gitta is short for Brigitte. So that's my real name. But I've been Gita ever since I came to the States. Well, let's go back to the time when things started happening in Germany. Hitler was on the move, and people were dying, people were disappearing. And in 1938, as I said, our dad disappeared. Now, during that time, and there was a brief time when it was allowed for families to go from camp to camp and say, is Eric Bayer here? Is Eric Bayer here? And eventually, they found our dad in Buchenwald, okay? And that's where he was. And so there was some way that you could get your family member out. You had to show that you had passage out of Germany. You had some way that you were leaving. They didn't want you there. The biggest thing that Hitler wanted was for all the Jews to be gone from Germany. And so he wanted to make sure people were leaving. And the families had gotten passage to China. Why China? Because during those years, as the war approached, every country turned away shiploads of refugees. Nobody wanted the Jewish people in their country. Even the United States did that, okay? They just said, turn around and go back where you came from. But China, which was very metropolitan, Shanghai especially, very industrial, they had businesses for years and years from Jewish families who lived there, some had a lot of money. They traded with every country in the world. Every country had some form of business in Shanghai. And they said, no, we're going to let everybody come here. We want to continue our businesses and our companies. And it doesn't matter if you have a visa, if you have papers, it doesn't matter at all. Just come on. And so in the end, 20,000 Jews went to Shanghai. Now, we have read 25,000, we have read 18,000, but it sort of averages out to about 20,000 Jews that were there. If you can imagine, and this happens even today, people cluster, right, with their own, with the people they know. We do that today, right? You see it everywhere. So somehow, and we have never figured this out, and remember, we were kids, so there's a lot that we didn't really know. Somehow all the Jewish people knew where to go when they landed in Shanghai. If our pictures were here, you would see a very large street, which was called Broadway. I don't know. and we would show you a picture of an archway on the sidewalk. And if you went through that archway, that was the Hangqiu Ghetto. That's what it was called. China's poorest people lived there, and all the Jewish people who arrived lived there. They knew to go there. Eventually it was called the Jewish ghetto, the Shanghai Jewish ghetto, you know, but it was in the area that was called Hangqiu. And it was made up of, it was a very, very large area. It was made of, when you go through the arch, there's a very long road, and off that road are like little alleys, and they had two-story buildings on every side of the main road going into the ghetto. And every one of the families, the individuals who came to Shanghai from wherever they came from, was given a room. So a family had one room to live in, maybe 15 by 15 size. And it was kind of like living in a dollhouse. Here's the kitchen, right? Over here is the bedroom. It was just one room, no matter how big your family was. But it was hardest of all for single men because they would put them 10 in a room. Yeah, they didn't know what to do with them, but give them bunk beds. So this was life in the ghetto. But as happens, there was a cafe, there was a little theater, there was a grocery store. They made a community out of living like that together. Now, for some reason, I think we learned that approximately 75% of the Jews living in the ghetto were from Germany. We spoke German. We went to a synagogue where everybody spoke German. We went to school where everybody spoke German. So that's how we grew up. We did not mingle with the Chinese families who lived in the ghetto as neighbors in some cases. They were unable to do anything for us because they were just as poor and had nothing, just like we did. So the head of household, of course, had to find a way to go out and work, find a way to feed their families or feed themselves. And so every day they left the ghetto and they worked in hotels and business, anything they could get, washing dishes, cleaning places, whatever they could get to feed us. And Monica and I have, we cannot remember ever eating anything. We don't know what we ate in those years, but we assure you it's not like going to a Chinese restaurant here, okay? Food was scarce for almost all families. So but we lived, we went to school. As children, we didn't know that we were destitute and poor. We played with the other kids, that's how life was. Our room contained a table, two small beds, one that Monica and I shared and one for our parents. We had a wood-burning stove that our dad would get up every morning to stoke so that he could boil water. You always had to boil the water in Shanghai before you drank it, used it for cooking, bathed in it, anything. You always boiled the water. So we remember very clearly our dad getting up early in the morning to stoke the coals in the stove and the wood. Eventually, sometimes he would work at some place where maybe he could bring home a little extra food, which was very, very good. What happened one day in the ghetto is that there seemed to be a lot of excitement, and everybody was running out of the archway onto Broadway. Everybody was lined up on Broadway sidewalks as far as you could see, one way or the other. Remember, there were about 20,000 of us at this time. And what happened is that as you look down the street to your left, from one side of the street to the other, we saw Japanese soldiers. This was right after Pearl Harbor. Okay, so this was the beginning of the war. They were marching with guns. They had tanks, they had trucks, they had cars, and it was like a wall coming towards you from side to side. Pretty frightening. And where do you think they went? Right into the ghetto. They, for lack of a better word, they herded us all together out of our rooms and took us what we think was just a much farther away part of the ghetto. And there we were interned, which means it was just a place to keep us, right? What to do with 20,000 people. There we lived in 2-story buildings. Mostly the German people lived in, sort of together, and the people from Poland and from Bulgaria and so on pretty much were able to live with their own, so to speak. There were many, 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 many buildings and a huge courtyard in the middle. We now lived 5 families in one room. The room was probably about the size of, we're going to say, a kindergarten room, okay, just to come up with some idea. If you were lucky, you had a blanket, a curtain, a sheet, something that would divide you from the other families, so you'd have some privacy. In this case, our family was fortunate because we got a corner. That means we had a window, okay? And that was, Monica and I used to sit for hours, just look out the window. Now, there was no such thing as inside plumbing in either place where we lived. Outside of each area, there would be rows of sinks and rows of toilets with no doors. Okay, so that's how it was. To bathe, you had to bring in water, heat it up in a tub, a round tub, and that's how we all took baths, so to speak. We continued to go to school, and this is what happened. Every day, the head of household, whoever it was, needed to go out to find work again. I mean, even though it was now the beginning of war, they needed to go out. They needed to feed their families. And there was a Japanese man named Mr. Goya. Now you can read about him in history books. Little tiny guy, okay? But he stood by the arch, and he had a table by him. And it was up to him whether he was going to let you go out to work that day. Perhaps it depended on which side of the bed he got out. He would say, you can go. You can't go. And that's kind of how it went. Sometimes he would jump up on this table and start yelling at people. So, as I say, you can read about him in history books. And that's then how people lived. We continued to go to school because, in the Jewish religion, what's more important than education? Nothing, right? Yeah, so we continued to go to school during all this time. There were 2 schools that had been built for the refugees by 2 very, very wealthy families. One of them was the Sassoon family. Some of you might remember the hair products, the Sassoons. They built one school, and the other family was the Kaduri family. And they made their money with opium, which was legal at the time. And we went to the Kaduri school. We loved going to school. Now, what was happening, because it was wartime, there were just endless air raid sirens. So there were procedures that we had to do. If you hear an air raid siren, whether you're alone in the room with your other families or your parents are there or not, the first thing you do is open the 2 windows that the room had to the outside. In case you were hit, the glass wouldn't implode in, right? And then you went into the center hall of the building and just waited until the all clear. And that happened many times a day. Now, we were not bombed every day like things were happening in Germany at that time, but it was frequent enough. If we were walking to school, and we always walked in groups, if the air raid siren went off, we had to get on the ground next to a curb and wait. There was nothing to do. Many times we walked over bodies. There were things that did happen. So that was just part of a routine way of life for everybody at that time. If you think about it, we were born in 1939. We were pretty young in 1941, but we have vivid memories of a lot of this stuff. We remember seeing people on the streets, living on the streets, eating, having children, being sick, dying on the street, and the bodies would just be there until somebody finally came around and would pick them up. And we have very clear memories of that, even though we were young. Excuse me. One day, just before 1945, when the war ended, I'd say about 6 months before the war ended, we had just turned 5 years old. A very traumatic thing happened to us. We came home from school and our mother was gone. Just gone. And she didn't come back. She never came back. Now, our father, as I mentioned earlier, he wouldn't tell us anything. He wouldn't say what happened. So we never knew. We don't really know to this day. We have been told some stories, but our dad, to his dying day, never told us what actually happened and why she was gone. Okay, we just didn't know. So then we lived with him alone for several years, and when we were 7, he married another refugee, another woman from Germany, who had a daughter a year younger than we were. This was a very unfortunate marriage for Monica and for me. That woman just hated us. No, we could never figure it out. We were the best kids, but she was just one of those stepmothers that didn't take to her stepchildren, okay? The 10 years of living with that woman, even after we came to the States, was worse for us than anything that happened to us in China, because we were older, we understood. And so we literally had 10 years of being physically and emotionally abused in every way you can think of. And those were pretty rough years for us. When we came to America, things didn't get any better. So that's just who she was. As adults, we understand that she had a terrible life and had terrible things happen to her, too. But, as kids, you don't know those things. You can't understand what's going on. So that was hard. And we often found that the best part of our life during those years was when the door closed on our apartment and we were free. And we became the people we are when we left home. We were happy. We were, we could do anything. We loved school. We loved everybody. We loved the kids. We loved the teachers. In fact, there's a picture that isn't here of our kindergarten, a picture with our teacher. Her name was Alice. And we begged our dad, please marry Alice. She's so nice and she likes us and we like her, but of course, that didn't happen. By the way, that picture, our kindergarten picture, is everywhere in the world. You can actually, if you could see it, and maybe when Monica shows up, nope, that's not Monica. You can see that picture because when you go into various museums in various cities and countries, there it is. So it's just one of those pictures that floats around. We're in books, it's in books and so on. There's also a picture I wish we could show you of a friend that we made in Shanghai. She lived, she was the same age, and we knew her all through the years in Shanghai. Her name, if anybody might know this, is Sonia. Oh my gosh. I'll have to come up with her. Sorry, I'm old. I'll have to come up with her last name. Sonia made it her life's work to locate, reunite as best she could the Jews of Shanghai and their families. And she's very famous, actually. She and her family actually returned to Berlin after the war. And she continues to speak, to write, and so on. She's written many, many books. She was an educator. Of the 20,000 Jews, she is responsible for 14,000 people being reunited, which is really something. We found each other on the internet. We've seen each other. And we have a wonderful picture of Sonia and the two of us when we were maybe 7 years old, and her brother is sitting on the ground in front of the three of us. Many years later, we got together outside of Berlin and tried to redo that picture. So the three of us stood behind, and Peter got down on the ground, and we had to help him up. He couldn't get up on himself by then, 69 years later. So we're still in touch with Sonia, and we see her often. I want to see where I want. I hate to keep going without Monica here in her pictures. She might not make it though, right? After the war was over, and I should tell you that when the war was over, we were 5 years old, okay? It was 6 months or so after our mother left, and that day, the entire camp ran out into that courtyard, and people were singing and laughing and hugging each other and jumping up and down. You can only imagine the war was over. It was done. And little by little, we were all taken back into the front of the ghetto where we used to live before the war, and given another room to live in the way it was before, and life returned to how it had been before we were taken to the camp. And slowly over the next few years, organizations from the United States and probably other countries met with every family and asked them where they would like to go now. If you want to leave China, where would you like to go? Now, you couldn't say, I want to go to Las Vegas or Miami or something, but you could say what country you wanted to go to. And our dad decided we should go to the United States because he thought there would be good opportunity for us here, a better opportunity than almost anywhere else. I saw the legs first, and I knew that wasn't my sister. Okay, so we stayed in Shanghai 3 more years before we got to leave for the United States. It was 1948, and we were put on a ship that had a huge ship. It was a freight ship. Do you want me to? Oh, yeah, yeah, you call.
I'm like sitting there worried.
Yeah, yeah. 310.
We're gonna call her sister.
Yeah, 720-5999. Okay, thanks. No, it is strange. They put us on a ship with thousands of refugees. That freight ship was carrying bananas, soldiers, and all these refugees. And what did they do with us? They put us below deck, okay? There was rows and rows and rows of bunk beds, 3 bunks high, and everybody slept across the beds so you could get as many people sleeping in one bed as possible. It was a 3-week trip. It was a horrendous trip because the weather was just awful. Storms, and almost all the adults were seasick. Most of the kids made it through okay. And again, I need to say, we don't know what we ate or how we ate. Perhaps we ate bananas. I'm not sure. One day, Monica and I decided to be a bit adventurous and go where we were not supposed to go, up a couple of decks, just to peek, just to see what's going on up there. We went up, I think, up to about the 2nd deck, opened the door, and it wasn't locked, and we could see a very long hall with lots of doors, and so we were 8 years old, remember? So we started walking down a little bit, and we actually saw a door was open a little bit, one of the doors. So of course we peeked in there. It was a room full of soldiers. They were drinking, they were smoking, they were laughing, and everybody was watching, looking towards the back wall. So we peeked in a little farther, and we saw something we had never seen before. There were people dancing and singing on the wall. What do you think? What do you think that was? A movie. What did we know about such things? Wow. Right? Yeah. We had no clue. It was kind of scary. And we turned right around and ran away and got back down, and we got away with the whole thing. Many years later, we actually found out that that particular movie was, you guys are all so young, a Danny Kaye musical. Anybody? Yeah, yeah. Anyway, that's not so important. Finally, we landed in San Francisco. And what an experience. Now, if you can imagine, we knew nothing. We had never seen things, anything. They take us to this lovely hotel. We get to stay in a beautiful hotel in San Francisco. They feed us food. We couldn't believe it. We couldn't eat enough, you know. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know. I don't know where.
Candace is gonna go get her.
Yeah, the wonderful woman who called her is gonna go pick her up right now.
Okay.
But you're telling your story so beautifully, and you're giving us a perspective that I don't know about everyone here, but I mean, I really didn't know anything about the Jews in Shanghai. So your perspective is so fascinating for us. Thank you so much. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to.
That's okay. Thank you.
Is Minion not happening here? So whenever it feels good to pause, I think maybe some people ask questions.
I'm sure.
Is that okay?
Anytime, yeah. I mean, there's...
But yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to tell you what you're saying.
Of course. No, I appreciate that. Many people don't know anything about the Jews in Shanghai, or the Shanghai Jews as we're known, and never had heard about that. So this is how our story is so very different. Have you guys listened to other survivors talk? Yes. Yeah. So you can see how different things are for...
You know, there was many similarities. Yes. Like we had to wait after the war in the displaced person camp. That's one huge thing. My parents waited 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you were shipped on a boat,
Three-
some conditions.
Yep, that's for sure.
You were in a ghetto.
Right, living with 5 families
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
room in a ghetto.
Yeah.
So many similarities.
That's right.
Before they got taken away from the ghetto.
Oh,
Were in ghettos for years.
yep, that's right.
So a lot of similarities.
That's
Not exactly, but sort of.
Yes,
So
just sort of. I know I'm probably leaving some things out, but I'm kind of trying to hit the main spots, such as in San Francisco, we saw things like drinking fountains. I mean, we were horrified. People would drink straight out when they didn't boil their water. You know, we were so afraid for them, you know. Elevators, escalators, you know, things like that. Our hotel room we had our own bathroom. It was right in there in the room. So those were very, very exciting things for all of us. Now, here's how this went. You had to wait in whether you landed in New York or San Francisco for 3 things to happen in order for the agencies like the JDC, you know, the different agencies that were helping relocate us. You had to wait for 3 criteria to happen. 1, somewhere there had to be a home for your family that was completely furnished. We're standing there with a little satchel and $12 in American money. Yay! Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm the lost sister. I don't have a mic. I
well,
read
you're
it.
proud now.
But I hear you've been carrying on.
I have, and they're going to throw me out pretty soon. No, what we're actually doing is we're in San Francisco, just talking about the criteria that had to take place before they could find a place for us. And I had just mentioned the first one.
Okay.
So do you want to pick it up from there?
Okay. So you said we had to have a fully furnished house, right? We arrived with a little suitcase and $12 in American money. And sat in San Francisco. Did you tell them all the wonderful things
I tried, yeah. Elevators, food,
elevators,
food.
drinking water,
Real milk.
bathtub, a real indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
We had not experienced these escalators. Yep, all that.
And real
Food we've never
milk.
seen or heard of. It was quite an experience. Uh-oh. It's not you calling. I
no.
thought maybe.
And milk, real milk. We had never
Real
had
milk.
anything.
Never had milk. Powdered milk. Let me shut this off. Sorry.
We love milk so much.
Still,
and
to this day.
Especially, well, if somebody gave us a carton of half and half to drink, we could do it.
If nobody was looking.
If no one was looking, or whipped cream.
We've never done it, but we've always said we'd love to drink a glass of cold half and half.
Yeah. But what about when we were on a cruise one time and we mentioned to the
Yeah.
waiters that they didn't give us enough whipped cream on our dessert? You know, could we have a little more? They came with a bowl.
A bowl of whipped cream.
Whipped cream this big, and put it in front of us. And we tried, didn't we?
Anyway, so the second criteria is a job for the head of household who probably doesn't speak English. So a job, the house, the home, a job. And the third criteria is that there's a school that will accept children that don't speak a word of English. So wherever those 3 things happen in the whole of the United States, that's where you go. You explained that while people could choose the country they wanted to go to. They couldn't say, I want to go to Miami. You know. So, and that's how we ended up in Duluth, Minnesota.
Yeah. And now
So,
For
for,
you
those of
guys.
you who don't know Duluth, Minnesota, it's one of the coldest places in the States, under Canada. That's on the tip of Lake Superior. And it's just winter 9 months out of the year.
we were lucky.
Oh,
We arrived in April,
April.
so spring was just starting.
So they put us in school for the summer to learn English. We went full-time summer school just to learn English, so that by the fall, we were a little bit, we could at least understand something.
But what happened is when they told us we were going to Duluth, they then put us on a train. So we had a kind of a fun train ride to Duluth, and somebody picked us up and drove us to this place, and they said, this is your new home, and it was upstairs of a duplex. And they told us kids to go ahead and run up the stairs. We were very excited.
Yeah, so we walk upstairs, and we go into a kitchen, and we assumed it was a kitchen because we saw pots and pans and stove like we'd never seen before. I'm sure Gita told you we only knew potbelly stove, and it was already a thrill because it was a pretty big room. And we saw off the kitchen, a door was open, and there was a bathroom. When we just couldn't believe we were going to be living in a room, we thought that was the room, which was already bigger than anything we'd lived in. And the pantry full of food, food. But no, it wasn't all there was. Yeah, there was a dining room, a living room, and 2 bedrooms, one for the parents and one for us.
Yeah.
And it was just a thrill. There were toys, there were clothes, and they were hand-me-downs, but
We
we didn't know and we didn't
that
care.
word.
It was absolutely amazing. And then we saw, I think it was in the living room or in
I think it was in our bedroom.
our bedroom. There was a little box. I don't know, not very big. And somebody went over there and did something, and suddenly there was music. And Gita and I ran around to the back and wondered if there were little people in there. I mean, we couldn't imagine what it was. What do you think it was? A radio. Well, just like the movie, we'd never heard of a radio or ever seen one.
That's right.
And nobody ever said there's such a thing as a radio.
Yeah.
You know.
We literally played it to death.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
Two questions. One, when you're describing, how old are you in this scene?
8.
You're 8
8
years
and a
old.
half.
So imagine 8 years old, and you just discovered a radio for the first time.
Yeah.
8 years old. And then the second, when you're describing how there's toys and food, was this house sponsored by like the JDC or Highest or something?
Well, yes.
Yes.
Highest and JDC were both helping Shanghai. I mean, the generosity of the American people after World War II was not to be believed, because there were hundreds of thousands of us who landed in the States, and all of us went through this. I mean, there were adults too, they didn't have quite the reaction we did because they knew about radios and movies and, stuff. But we stayed in Duluth 4 years.
4 years. Mhm.
And then moved to Minneapolis, where our dad thought we would have more opportunity
Yeah,
there.
a bigger city. But in Duluth, we also had a backyard surrounded by lilac bushes. Oh, it was just like a dream, right?
Now, I will jump in and say, we later found out, I think we were about 18 when we went back one time, and learned that we were in the slums of Duluth. But
We didn't
believe,
know.
believe us when we tell you this was a castle.
It was paradise
It
to
was
us.
unimaginable that we lived in 5 rooms and we had all that.
Everything,
It was
yeah.
unimaginable.
Yeah. Remember the first few winters, we had to wear 3 or 4 coats.
Yeah,
You know, this is
we had
40
not known the weather like this.
40 below zero weather, snow, almost up to our waist, walking to school. We are those kids.
Who walked a mile to shul. Okay, we are the kids who walked to the temple 1 mile.
Ladies,
Yeah,
can
1
we give
mile.
the kids a few minutes to
Yes.
ask questions?
Yes,
They're gonna be
sure.
nervous. So,
I would like to wind up our story though.
okay.
Okay, let me
Absolutely.
wind up our story. So I guess you've gotten the idea that childhood was a little tough for us. In the whole, did you talk about it? Yeah. Okay. So between the war and our stepmother, which that continued, by the way, until we were 17 and got out of the house. But we have made up for our childhood as best as we could. As you see, we're not depressed people. We're quite happy. We had lots of opportunities here and we took them. I was able to get scholarships, go to USC, all the way through a PhD. I had a wonderful career. Geeta did something really miraculous. She rebuilt our family. We have a huge family in Minneapolis. They like that weather, you know. So every Thanksgiving, we have a family reunion. And last Thanksgiving, last November, we sat 47 people, all family and extended family. Which is really a miracle. And, you know, we didn't have anybody. I don't know if you told them. No one else survived but our 2 parents. So this is really special. Yes.
So with all the hardships that you guys endured, how did you maintain such a positive attitude and come out of it so happy and healthy and with such a bright life that you had?
We had each other.
Always.
Number one, we had each other.
Always had
and
each other.
We're as close today as we were growing up.
In the womb.
Yeah, in the womb. But we also had a great many adults that supported us once the door to our home closed and we were out. People liked us. They did not think we were fat, stupid, and ugly, which is how
As our stepmother raised
that was
us.
the mantra in the house. They liked us. They supported us. We had neighbors who heard the Chazarai in the house and said, "What's going on? Can we help you?" And you know, abused children don't want anybody to know, much less help. It's not, you know, they're scared. And we had teachers, especially teachers, who recognized something in us besides being cute twins, you know. Really, really helped us once we were out. And we think that really helped us along the way. Yes.
How many languages do you speak now?
Just 2.
Not Chinese.
Chinese, no. We didn't really mingle with the Chinese in the ghetto until after the war. After the war, we played
Played
with
games.
the children, and they sang to every game they played. And to this day, we can sing with three of the songs. We will not do them for you. But we have done them for Chinese people, and they say, not bad. But no, we never learned. We never learned, yes.
So whatever happened to your stepmother? Did she end up ever apologizing? Or
Oh,
were you, and
my
are you
goodness,
close
no.
to your stepsister?
Never. She was always the same. I once went to visit them. I ran away to California when we were 18. She already had a 3-month-old. And I came to LA with a friend, and I landed here, and I said, why am I living in Minnesota when I could be living here?
I think
So
Ella has a question.
I moved.
You said your stepmother had a daughter.
Mhm.
What was she like? Was she nice too?
She was just like her mother.
She was her mother's daughter, and she is to this, well, the last time we saw her was, what, 15 years ago?
Yeah, at our 70th birthday, my son threw a big to-do for us, and he didn't really realize how we didn't really engage with this person, and invited her and her husband to our 70th birthday. Not only that, he brought our sister and her husband from Israel. Our mother and her husband had a daughter too. She's 7 years younger. Mhm. And I think I neglected to talk much about them, but yeah.
We have a family in Israel.
So we have a
one
whole
part-
family in Israel. We're very close.
half-sister and her child
Are
and
there, we only have
grandchildren.
a few more minutes.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and ask questions.
Elliot?
My question is, did your stepmom start being mean like when they first met, or did she start being mean when they got married?
You know, we didn't know when they first met. When they married and she came into the house, she seemed to take an immediate dislike of us. And she just didn't like us. She didn't like us.
Gabriel?
Is your stepsister nice to you now?
No.
She came
Made
to
a
that
big-
party and completely
Made a
ruined
big
it.
scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else did she do that was mean to you?
I'm sorry?
What else did she do that was mean to you?
Our stepsister? Our stepsister?
No, our stepmother.
Our stepsister. I'll give you just one example. Quickly. Things would be okay. We'd come home from school. This is like in high school. And everything would be fine. The door would open. Our stepmother would come in, and she'd throw herself on the floor and start crying and saying that we had beat her up and anything. And that's just one example.
Layla?
Not in the war. We lost our parents like most people do. They died later in their years.
But they never lived in the States.
What do you mean they never?
Well, our dad did, but I mean our mother.
Didn't your mother?
Did you talk about finding her, Gita?
Oh,
No.
we didn't hear that part.
I know, we have too many
We
stories.
have too many.
We did find our mother.
We found our mother.
We did a 5-year search and we found her in Israel.
That's why you have Israel there. Oh, wait, she's living.
Yep.
Wow. Amazing. So did she ever say what happened?
We searched for her for 5
Did
years.
she ever tell you what happened?
Many stories. Many stories.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
when we found her, she was already in early onset Alzheimer's, and we had about 6 stories.
Yeah.
So we don't know what really happened.
Lexi?
Was school the same when you were younger in schools, or was it like different?
In Shanghai, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same. We had different classes, we actually were way ahead in math and stuff like that. When we came here, we were straight A students.
Yeah, once we learned the
for
language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spencer?
This young man's been waiting
Sorry,
too.
Spencer? Yeah, you've been waiting.
I have a comment.
And then
It would be really cool if when we're on the ship and the movie you saw was had the act that famous actress your dad
Spencer?
No.
In spite of us begging him to.
We tried to talk him into it, but he didn't want to be alone. He knew we were going to leave the house. He didn't want to be alone. One more here.
How do you find out the information missing, like your mother? Like, how do you find it?
We found her with the help of the Council of Jewish Women, who have an office that look for split families, and they helped us over 5 years. And then one day they just called and said, we found her.
Found your mother. And talking about how Holocaust survivors often don't talk. When our mother got a letter from them saying your daughters are looking for you, your daughters in America are looking for you, she was so excited. She took the letter, ran down the hall. This is in Israel now. She was living in Israel. Ran down the hall to her daughter's room and said, my girls, they're looking for me. And you
What
know
do you
what
think she said? What girls?
She didn't
Nothing
even know
about
about
it.
us.
Nobody ever said. And there were a lot of refugees in Israel who were in Shanghai who knew the story, and nobody ever would say anything about it. And that's why
Sarah?
we talked to many of them over the years.
Let's
So we have to unfortunately wrap up there. So if your parents are here, you're welcome to stay. If you guys are
Yes,
okay
yes,
with it.
absolutely.
If your parents aren't here, I'm so sorry, but we can't make you late for carpool. But if your parents are here and you want to take pictures and you want to talk, you're welcome to stay. It's the sky's the limit. So
Sorry.
so don't be sorry. Please don't be sorry.
So many stories.
I have one more question. Did your dad ever do anything? Did your dad ever know about a stepmom being in your sister?
Can I ask them real quick and then go to carpool?
Jonah, do you know me? Make sure you bring everything.
I just said thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming and being interested. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Just leave them there, my love.
What?
You can leave them there. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
He said, yeah, in a couple of years.
Can I take a photo with you?
No, it's kind of a nabbage.